Welcome to Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends by Sequoia Connect, the space where we explore, with clarity and purpose, the real impact of talent, technology, and artificial intelligence on organizations.
We are Silva, and today we invite you to reflect with us on the decisions shaping the present and future of the IT industry.
Here, we don't just discuss headhunting, AI, or tech consulting. We discuss what truly drives people, the need to grow, adapt, and lead.
This episode is for you if you're ready to take control of your career, lead change, or learn something new.
Let's get started. So right now, as we speak, 80% of corporate artificial intelligence initiatives are failing.
Yeah, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. I mean,
Yeah.
we are talking about millions upon millions of dollars just vaporizing into the ether.
Right. It's staggering.
It really is. And, as we dig into the source materials for today's deep dive, the most shocking realization is that these massive failures, they're rarely due to a software glitch.
No, not at all.
Or like a flawed algorithm or a lack of computing power. The failure actually stems from this massive hidden psychological glitch in the human beings attempting to deploy the tech.
Exactly. And that's why today we're doing a custom deep dive for you, the listener, into this really fascinating case study. It's all centered around this concept of upgrading the human OS.
The human operating system.
Right, the human operating system.
Yeah.
Because if you look closely at the research we're going through, the human OS is it's the ultimate operational barrier to any AI strategy.
Yeah, and we are going to explore this through the lens of a specific scenario from our materials, featuring a CEO named Javier and his CTO, Elena.
I think framing it as an operating system issue is just, well, it's the perfect way to understand the friction we're seeing in these source documents.
Definitely.
Because think about when you upgrade a computer's OS, right? It's entirely predictable. You download the patch, the progress bar moves from 0 to 100, you reboot, and boom, you have new capabilities.
Right, it just works.
Yeah, but Javier and Elena's case study shows that human psychology doesn't have a progress bar. You know, you can't just force a reboot on an entire workforce simply by buying new software licenses.
No, you really can't. And let's set the stage with what Javier and Elena actually did. Because according to the case study, I mean, they did everything by the book.
Oh, they were textbook.
Yeah, they sat in the boardroom, they had rigorous debates, they defined their strategic North Star, and they finally cleared what the research calls the AI fog.
And clearing that fog at the executive level is a huge intellectual victory.
Oh, yeah.
When the sources talk about the AI fog, they're referring to that dense layer of buzzwords, vendor hype, frankly, panic that surrounds artificial intelligence.
Right, all the noise.
Exactly. Javier and Elena pushed through all that noise. They stopped looking at AI as magic and started looking at it as a utility.
Yeah.
And they mapped out incredibly clear horizons for deployment.
Yeah, the roadmap they built was broken down into 3 perfect phases.
Yeah.
They had the now horizon, which was the immediate 3 to 6 months. They had the next horizon, stretching from 6 to 12 months. And then the beyond horizon, projecting out 1 to 3 years.
That's a great plan.
If you look at this on paper, it's a masterpiece of corporate strategy. I mean, it is flawless. But the case study reveals this terrifying reality. The moment they walked out of that boardroom and attempted to execute this perfect roadmap,
They hit a wall.
they hit a massive wall. And not a technological wall, but a wall of completely paralyzed people.
Yeah, and this phenomenon of the paper-perfect strategy is it's one of the most common pitfalls identified in organizational change research.
That's absolutely.
Executives routinely mistake a clear technological timeline for organizational readiness because Javier and Elena spent weeks in the boardroom wrestling with these concepts.
Right. They did the hard work.
Yeah, and they finally achieved clarity, so they just assumed that emotional and operational journey would instantly transfer to the rest of the company.
They assumed the aha moment was contagious. But, it isn't. Just because the CEO can clearly see the destination doesn't mean the ground-level employees are prepared for the actual journey.
No, not at all. The contrast between the executive experience and the operational experience is just staggering.
Yeah.
Because up in the boardroom, lifting the AI fog feels empowering, right? You have a plan to streamline operations, increase margins.
You're saving money, making things efficient.
Exactly. But on the ground floor, that exact same clarity doesn't feel like a victory. It feels like an impending earthquake.
Oh, wow.
The executives are looking at a horizon of efficiency, but the operational teams, they're looking at a horizon of absolute obsolescence.
That is such a good way to put it. I think of it like this. Imagine you decide to upgrade your family's transportation. So you go out and buy a state-of-the-art Formula One race car for your morning commute.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. So the machine is sitting in the driveway. It's fully fueled. The engine is tuned to perfection. The tires are warm. The technology is undeniably superior.
Right.
But nobody in your family knows how to drive a manual transmission, let alone pilot a hypercar.
Exactly.
The hardware is ready, but the human operating system required to interact with that hardware simply does not exist in your household.
And pushing the gas pedal without knowing how to steer only leads to a crash.
Right into the garage wall.
Right. And that is the exact paralysis Javier and Elena encountered. The strategy was theoretically sound, the tools were there, but the human beings tasked with driving the transformation were frozen in place.
Completely frozen.
And what makes this case study so compelling is that the source material points out the strategy didn't just fail for one uniform reason. It failed because of two highly distinct, almost contradictory psychological reactions across two very different divisions of the company.
Which perfectly brings us to part 2 of our deep dive. We really need to dissect both sides of this organizational coin.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's start with the technical side. Elena's side of the house. As the chief technology officer, Elena oversees the engineering floor. These are the software developers, the system architects, the database admins.
The builders.
Right. Theoretically, these are the builders. These are the people who should be the most thrilled about a new technological frontier.
You would think so, yeah.
But instead of excitement, the research notes that Elena's team is completely trapped in a state called replacement anxiety.
And, replacement anxiety goes far beyond a simple fear of being laid off. To truly grasp why it paralyzes a highly intelligent engineering team, we have to look at the underlying psychology of the veteran technologist.
Okay, break that down for us.
Oh, consider the career path of a senior software engineer. They've likely spent 10, maybe 20 years mastering incredibly complex, arcane coding languages.
Oh, absolutely.
They understand the deep logic of memory allocation, the structural nuances of object-oriented programming in C++ Evo, the maddening intricacies of debugging a system architecture.
They have essentially learned to speak machine fluently.
Yes, fluently. And they built their entire professional identity, their compensation, their status among their peers on the fact that they can understand a syntax that looks like pure, incomprehensible gibberish to the CEO.
Right, it's like a superpower.
It is. They hold a monopoly on technical execution. Their value proposition to the organization is rooted entirely in their technical superiority.
Yeah.
So when a business leader needs a new app built, they must go through the engineers who then translate that business need into code over the course of weeks or months.
But now you introduce generative AI into that ecosystem.
Exactly.
Suddenly, an artificial neural network can generate functionally identical complex code, and it doesn't require arcane syntax to do it, right?
Right.
It's triggered by plain text English prompts. So instead of a veteran developer spending 3 days writing hundreds of lines of Python script to scrape a database, a junior marketing analyst can literally type into a chat window, write a script that pulls customer email addresses from this database and sorts them by purchase history.
And boom.
And the AI spits out the correct Python code in 4 seconds.
Yeah. And the speed and ease of that process strip away the engineer's monopoly.
Wow. Yeah, I can see that.
For the veteran developer, this generative AI model isn't just a shiny new productivity tool. It's perceived as a direct existential threat to their hard-won expertise.
Right, because they're watching their deep technical wisdom be reduced to a conversational prompt.
Precisely. What Elena is witnessing on her engineering floor isn't stubbornness or laziness. It's an active, profound grieving process. Yeah, grieving. They're mourning the loss of their specialized status, which plunges them into a severe identity crisis.
Wow, okay. I understand the psychological blow, but let me push back on this a bit. Just playing devil's advocate for the listener here.
Sure, go ahead.
Isn't a natural language prompt essentially just the newest, highest level coding language? I mean, if we look at the history of computing, we went from physically punching holes in cards to writing an assembly language to abstracting that into C++A and then further abstracting that into Python or Ruby.
Right.
Every single leap abstracted the tedious lower level work. So why is the anxiety so paralyzing right now? Shouldn't these engineers be throwing a party that they can skip the tedious syntax and go straight to the creative, high-level architecture of problem solving?
Well, if human beings operated purely on logic, yes, they would be thrilled.
Right.
But the transition you just outlined, from assembly to C++ to Python, That was fundamentally a translation of logic within the same domain.
Okay.
The engineer was still fully in control of every single parameter and instruction.
I see.
Moving from writing explicit Python code to using natural language to prompt a probabilistic AI model feels distinctly different. It feels like a surrender of control.
Because the machine is making logical leaps on its own?
Precisely. And furthermore, the anxiety is deeply tied to the democratization of the skill.
Right.
When the barrier to entry was learning C++ sane, the engineer's job was highly insulated. If anyone who speaks conversational English can now theoretically code by directing an AI, the veteran engineer is forced to ask a terrifying question.
What's the question?
If the machine writes the code and the marketing guy can tell the machine what to do, what is my unique value? Why is the company paying me?
Oh, man. Yeah.
As the case study highlights, this is an identity crisis masquerading as a workflow problem. They freeze because engaging with the AI feels like training their own replacement.
That distinction between translating logic and surrendering control makes total sense. So the engineering team is completely locked up out of this existential fear of obsolescence.
Exactly.
But here's where the case study gets truly fascinating. Because while the technical side of the house is freezing out of fear, the business leaders, Javier's side of the house, are freezing for the exact opposite reason. They aren't terrified of the AI at all. They're completely and utterly apathetic toward it.
And in many ways, apathy and abdication are far more lethal to an organizational transformation than active resistance.
Really? More lethal?
Oh, absolutely. Resistance, at least, means the team is engaging with the concept. Apathy means they have entirely checked out.
Wow. So we're looking at Javier's functional managers here. The director of human resources, the head of finance, the chief marketing officer.
Right.
According to the research, they are uniformly treating this massive strategic AI rollout as Elena's IT project.
Yes.
They're just sitting at their desks, arms crossed, passively waiting for the technology department to deliver a finished, shrink-wrapped tool.
Waiting for someone else to do the work.
Exactly. They're completely failing to take any ownership of the transformation within their own specific departments.
And the source material explicitly links this non-technical disengagement to that horrifying statistic we opened with, the 80% failure rate in corporate AI projects.
Oh, right.
8 out of 10 AI initiatives collapse, not because the data pipeline was broken or the algorithms hallucinated. They collapse because the business side of the company fundamentally disengaged from the process.
So to understand why these highly paid, highly competent functional managers just check out, we have to look backward, right? We have to unpack the historical baggage of enterprise software procurement.
Yeah, the historical context is everything here. Because for the last 30 or 40 years, functional managers have been strictly conditioned by the tech industry to operate as passive users.
Passive users.
Right. Think about the classic software deployment cycle of the late 90s or early 2000s.
Right.
If the HR director decides the company needs a new payroll management system, they don't build it.
No, they'd never build it.
They draft a list of business requirements and hand that document over to IT. The IT department then goes away for 6 to 12 months.
Just disappears into the basement.
Right. They vet vendors, they negotiate licenses, they configure servers, install the software, and eventually they return to the HR director to hand over a login screen and a user manual.
It's the ultimate IT help desk dynamic. You submit a support ticket for a need, you wait in the queue, and eventually the technical wizards behind the curtain fix your problem or deliver the app.
Exactly.
You, as the functional manager, never have to concern yourself with how the software actually works under the hood, only that it does work when you click the button.
And that legacy mindset is deeply ingrained in corporate culture. The functional manager assumes their job is to consume technology, not to shape it.
Right.
But applying this legacy help desk mental model to generative artificial intelligence is absolutely fatal.
Fatal.
Yes. AI is not a static software application like a payroll database or a word processor. It is entirely dynamic. An AI model requires constant context, continuous behavioral training, and deep domain expertise to yield anything of practical business value.
Okay, to make this incredibly concrete for you listening, it's like a restaurant manager deciding to revamp the entire dinner menu, and instead of hiring a head chef, they delegate the menu creation to the electrician simply because the new ovens plug into the wall.
That's a great analogy.
Right. The restaurant manager throws their hands up and says, well, the oven uses electricity and AI uses computers, so obviously this is the IT department's job.
Yeah.
But AI isn't the oven. AI is the raw ingredients. And the electrician, as skilled as they are at wiring a building, doesn't know the first thing about flavor profiles, seasonal ingredients, or what your local customers actually want to eat.
Precisely. Sustaining that analogy, the IT department, Elena's engineers, they know exactly how to plug the AI in.
Right.
They know how to secure the data perimeter, how to manage the API calls, how to handle the computing infrastructure. But they do not know what constitutes a nuanced, highly effective marketing campaign for a niche demographic.
No, of course not.
They don't understand the subtle risk tolerances required in the finance department's quarterly projections. If the functional managers abdicate their responsibility to train and guide the AI, the IT department is forced to guess.
And guessing is bad.
Very bad. The resulting AI outputs might be technically flawless, but they will be practically useless to the business.
So Javier and Elena are staring at a perfect storm of paralysis.
Complete storm.
On one side, the engineers are terrified the tool will replace them, so they resist it. On the other side, the business leaders view it as an IT problem and wait for someone else to build it.
Right.
It completely demystifies that 80% failure rate. So the critical question of the deep dive becomes, how do they fix the actual bottleneck? Because clearly you cannot solve a human psychological crisis by buying more cloud computing power.
No, you can't. The bottleneck is an outdated mental model of work itself.
Okay.
To fix it, the source material indicates that Javier and Elena must fundamentally redefine what it means to be a manager inside their organization.
Wow, fundamentally redefine it.
Yeah. They have to trigger a philosophical shift referred to in the case study as the management mandate.
The management mandate. Okay.
Yeah.
And this mandate demands a shift from being a passive user to an active orchestrator.
Right.
And the first step of that roadmap requires breaking a very specific habit. Managers must immediately stop treating generative AI as just a better search engine or a fancy template generator.
Yeah, and the search engine mindset is incredibly pervasive
Right.
because, we've been trained by decades of web browsing to view computers as simple retrieval systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. Google taught us well.
Exactly. When you use a search engine, you type in a query, and the system searches an existing massive index to fetch a document that already exists. It retrieves information. But generative AI is fundamentally different. It is a reasoning engine.
Right, a reasoning engine. And when you treat a reasoning engine like a search engine, you are vastly underutilizing its capability.
Vastly.
You're taking that Formula One hypercar from our earlier analogy, and you are only using it to drive down your driveway to check the mailbox.
That's exactly what it is. The organization must evolve from a phase of execution to a phase of orchestration.
Okay, orchestration.
Yeah. In this new paradigm, a manager's core value to the company is no longer found in their ability to manually execute routine tasks. Their value transitions into a concept the research calls the mastery of intent.
Mastery of intent. Let's really pull this apart because this is a massive philosophical shift for anyone accustomed to traditional corporate work.
Huge shift.
What does it actually mean to move from executing tasks to orchestrating outcomes?
Well, it requires a shift from manually doing the work to expertly guiding the work.
Guiding it.
Right. The case study introduces a framework called architectural intent.
Okay.
We can define architectural intent as the human ability to visualize the final, highly complex structure of a project in your mind's eye, whether that's a software app, a marketing rollout, or a financial model.
You have to see the big picture.
Right. You see the picture, and then you expertly coordinate the AI to build that vision piece by piece, layer by layer.
Think about it like a symphony. Imagine you have spent your entire career playing the violin in an orchestra.
Right.
You are exceptionally good at it. Your daily focus is entirely on your sheet music, your specific bowing technique, ensuring your notes are perfectly in tune. Your entire professional value is tied to executing those specific notes.
Very true.
But suddenly, an AI system is introduced to the orchestra. And this AI can play every single instrument, the violin, the cello, the oboe, the timpani, perfectly, all at once.
Wow.
If you only know how to execute on the violin, you are out of a job. To survive, you must step off the chair and step onto the conductor's podium. You have to trade your violin bow for the conductor's baton.
That's brilliant.
But how do you conduct the entire symphony? How do you orchestrate these complex interwoven algorithms if your mindset has only ever been focused on playing your own single instrument?
Well, a violinist executes the notes on the page, right? But a conductor orchestrates the emotional outcome of the performance. The conductor doesn't need to know how to physically blow into the French horn better than the machine can. They need to know precisely when the French horn should enter the arrangement.
Oh,
They
exactly.
need to know how loudly it should play to balance the string section and how the overall tempo drives the intended emotion of the piece. That overarching vision and coordination, that is architectural intent.
So, transitioning a whole company of violinists into a company of conductors isn't something Javier and Elena can achieve by just sending out a company-wide memo.
Definitely not.
The source material outlines that the leadership board has to embrace a very specific operational framework. They call this radical ownership. And for anyone listening who wants to future-proof their career, this is where the theory hits the pavement.
Radical ownership is the bridge between human paralysis and true AI integration. And the case study anchors this transformation on three distinct pillars.
Oh.
If an individual professional or an entire organization can master these three pillars, they successfully upgrade the human OS.
Let's analyze these pillars deeply. Pillar number 1 is mastery in intent communication.
Yes.
The core directive here is that managers must stop giving technical instructions to the AI and start communicating overarching business objectives.
Right. And the distinction between a technical instruction and a business objective really reveals how well you understand the tool.
How so?
Well, a technical instruction is rigid, mechanical, and constraining. For example, a manager might prompt the AI with, write a 500-word email using these three specific keywords about our new product.
Okay, that sounds like a normal prompt.
Right, but that is a technical instruction. It forces the AI into a narrow box.
Ah, I see.
A business objective, however, is deeply contextual. An orchestrator would prompt the AI with, draft a communication to our legacy enterprise clients that reassures them about our recent merger. The objective is to emphasize continuity of service while highlighting our new expanded capabilities. Adopt a tone that is warm, highly professional, and instills long-term confidence.
Wow. Yeah, that's completely different. It is the exact difference between micromanaging a subordinate and empowering a leader.
Exactly.
When you micromanage the machine with rigid technical parameters, you are artificially capping its intelligence at your own level of expertise. You're using its typing speed, but ignoring its reasoning power.
That's spot on. Generative AI models thrive on deep context, not micromanagement. When you communicate a rich business objective, you allow the reasoning engine to explore multiple linguistic or logical pathways to achieve your ultimate goal.
Right.
Mastery in intent communication means a manager must learn how to articulate the why we are doing this and the what we want to achieve, while confidently letting the AI figure out the optimal how.
Which perfectly sets up the second pillar of radical ownership. And honestly, this might be the most crucial one for job security.
Oh, I agree.
It's architectural judgment. This pillar dictates that while the AI can rapidly generate the software code, the marketing copy, or the financial forecast, the human being is strictly required to validate its integrity, its security, and its scalability.
Yes, and this specific pillar directly addresses the replacement anxiety experienced by Lena's engineers.
Right, because they were terrified of losing their value.
Exactly. The AI can generate the output faster than any human, but the AI fundamentally lacks judgment. It does not possess lived experience.
Right.
An AI model cannot inherently spot a subtle systemic security flaw in a piece of code that a hacker might exploit 3 years down the line. It cannot intuitively sense if a generated marketing campaign is culturally tone-deaf to current events.
So this is where the true irreplaceable value of the veteran professional resides.
Yes.
If the AI is capable of writing the entire article, the human professional shifts from being the staff writer to being the editor-in-chief.
The editor-in-chief analogy is highly accurate. The AI generates the raw material, but the human applies the critical standard of quality and safety.
But I have to ask a challenging question here, because I see a massive danger in this model.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the human is elevated to editor-in-chief and the AI is doing all the actual daily writing, coding, or calculating, what happens to the human's skills over time? What if the editor eventually forgets how to write? What if the veteran software engineer loses their deep structural understanding of system architecture because they haven't been in the weeds writing line-by-line code for 5 years?
That is a brilliant point. The atrophy of foundational skills is the core danger of the architectural judgment pillar.
Right.
You cannot be an effective editor-in-chief if you fundamentally forget the rules of journalism.
You just can't.
And you cannot reliably validate the security of an AI-generated code base if you allow your understanding of system architecture to decay. This pillar essentially demands that veteran wisdom isn't discarded when AI arrives.
Okay.
Rather, it is elevated and rigorously maintained. The human remains the final, accountable arbiter of truth, logic, and safety. In the orchestration phase, you are no longer paid for your typing speed or your manual labor. You are compensated entirely for your judgment.
You are paid for your judgment. I love the clarity of that. Okay, let's move to the third pillar of radical ownership, which is resilience and negotiation.
Yes.
The case study specifically notes that we are operating in a VUCA environment, and therefore leaders must adapt with unprecedented speed.
And VUCA is an acronym originating from military strategy. It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
Okay, VUCA.
Yeah. And it is the most accurate description of the current technological and economic landscape.
Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I mean, for many professionals listening, that probably sounds like their average Tuesday morning.
Right.
But why does the case study elevate resilience and negotiation to a core, non-negotiable job requirement specifically because of AI?
Well, because the underlying technology is iterating at a pace we have never seen before in human history.
That's true.
New AI models, entirely new capabilities, and shifting regulatory frameworks are introduced almost weekly.
It's relentless.
It really is. So if you build a rigid departmental strategy that relies entirely on the specific user interface or the specific quirks of one single AI tool today, well, that tool might be fundamentally altered or rendered entirely obsolete by next month.
Wow. Yeah.
Resilience in a VUCA environment means your operational strategy cannot be brittle.
And the negotiation aspect.
Negotiation means you are constantly engaged in a dynamic dialogue. You're negotiating with your team regarding their changing roles, you are negotiating with the technology as it shifts, and you're negotiating with the rapidly changing market landscape.
Constantly adapting.
Right. You must possess the agility to pivot your architectural intent rapidly as the technological ground literally shifts beneath your feet.
So we have thoroughly defined these three theoretical pillars of radical ownership: mastery in intent communication, architectural judgment, and resilience and negotiation.
Yes.
But theory only gets us so far, right? How do these pillars actually manifest in the daily, messy realities of non-technical departments?
That's the real test.
Because it's one thing for us to discuss intent communication in the abstract. It's another thing entirely to be a manager sitting at a desk in human resources or finance, staring at a screen, trying to figure out how to do your job differently today than you did yesterday.
Oh, absolutely. Moving from theory to practice is what the source material labels as phase 2, the functional orchestrator in action.
Right.
We need to look beyond the keyboard and apply this orchestration mindset to highly specific traditional corporate roles.
Let's dive into those examples. We mentioned the Director of Human Resources earlier.
Right.
Under the legacy passive user model, maybe the HR director was simply hoping the IT department would install an AI tool that acts as an automated resume screener.
Yeah, just scanning documents.
Right. Just a faster way to filter out candidates by keyword. How does an HR director completely abandon that mindset and become an orchestrator?
Well, if the HR director embraces radical ownership, they recognize that using AI merely for automated resume screening is a failure of imagination.
Really? A failure of imagination?
Yes, because it's just speeding up a legacy technical task. True orchestration in HR involves fundamentally redesigning the entire talent architecture of the company.
Okay, but how does that actually work mechanically? What is the HR orchestrator actually asking the AI to do?
Instead of looking backward at old resumes,
Yeah.
they are using the AI's reasoning engine to project forward.
Projecting forward, okay.
Yeah. They prompt the AI to ingest massive amounts of internal performance data, cross-reference it with shifting global market trends, and identify exactly which hidden soft skills within the existing workforce are going to be critical 3 years from now.
Oh, wow.
Right? So the HR director transitions from simply filling open requisition slots to actively orchestrating the evolution of the company's human capital.
That's huge.
They're using their architectural judgment to design the shape of the future workforce so it survives the VUCA environment.
Think about the implication for your own career right now if you're listening. You aren't just processing paperwork or running the same routine plays anymore. You are architecting the future structural integrity of the business.
Exactly.
Let's apply this to the finance department. What does it look like for a head of finance to become an orchestrator? Traditionally, finance is a backward-looking function, right? You generate monthly reports, you tally quarterly earnings, you look at static spreadsheets to see what already happened.
Yeah, the legacy finance head operates as a corporate historian. They document and report on the past.
Right, they tell you what you spent.
But the orchestrator finance head operates as a navigator.
A navigator, I like that.
They don't just use generative AI to write a faster summary of last month's losses. They apply their mastery of intent to lead the machine in simulating massive, complex risk scenarios in real time.
So they are actively querying the AI with complex what-if scenarios to predict the financial weather.
Precisely.
Like, what if global inflation jumps 2.5% next quarter, while simultaneously our supply chain costs in Asia drop by 4%, and a new competitor enters our primary European market?
Yes, and that dynamic querying is what separates the historian from the navigator. When the finance head asks that multivariable what-if question, they are prompting the AI to run thousands of Monte Carlo simulations.
Wait, so for anyone listening who isn't a statistician, let's break down what a Monte Carlo simulation actually is and why AI makes it so different now.
Okay, so a Monte Carlo simulation is a mathematical technique used to estimate the possible outcomes of highly uncertain events.
Right.
Traditional finance might run a few basic scenarios manually: a best-case scenario, a worst-case scenario, and an average-case scenario.
And that takes a long time.
It takes days to build the models, but a Monte Carlo simulation runs thousands or even tens of thousands of localized scenarios, injecting random variables each time to build a highly accurate probability curve.
Wow.
Doing that with legacy software requires immense setup and specialized coding.
Yeah.
But with an AI orchestrator, the finance head can dynamically adjust the parameters in plain language, and the reasoning engine computes the probabilistic outcomes almost instantly.
Almost instantly. That's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
They use their architectural judgment to validate the assumptions the AI used, and they provide the CEO with a dynamic, living model of the company's financial resilience. They move from reporting the news to predicting the future.
That level of agility is just incredible. And the case study also highlights the marketing department. The research states that marketing moves from being an approver to becoming the architect of the brand's voice.
Right. In the traditional legacy model, a human copywriter spends 3 days writing a campaign, and the marketing director reviews it, gives notes, and approves it.
It's very linear.
Right. It's a linear one-to-one workflow. Under the orchestration model, an AI can generate 10,000 distinct variations of a marketing campaign, instantly tailoring the language to micro-demographics across 50 different regions.
And obviously, the marketing director cannot physically read and manually approve 10,000 pieces of copy.
Exactly. If they tried to maintain the legacy approver mindset, the sheer volume of output would literally break the department.
Yeah, they'd never sleep.
So their fundamental role must shift. They must step back and become the architect of the brand's voice.
Okay, so what does that look like day to day?
Instead of reviewing individual sentences, they focus their energy on training the foundational AI models. They set precise guardrails.
Right.
They define the emotional resonance, the ethical boundaries, and the core values of the brand. They communicate the grand business objective, the intent, and rely on their architectural judgment at the systems level to ensure the AI's massive automated output never deviates from the brand's core identity.
This grand vision of functional orchestration across HR, finance, and marketing is undeniably inspiring. It really paints a picture of a highly elevated strategic workforce.
It really does.
But let's ground this back in the immediate reality facing Javier and Elena, because they currently have a paralyzed, fearful engineering floor and a completely apathetic group of business managers.
Right, they have a mess.
They have an 80% statistical failure rate looming over their heads. So how do they actually initiate this massive psychological shift today? How do they get traction right now in the now horizon of 3 to 6 months?
Well, the research is very clear on this operational reality. You cannot boil the ocean.
You can't do it all at once.
No, you cannot successfully mandate a psychological transformation across an entire enterprise workforce overnight. Execution in the short term, breaking the paralysis, depends entirely on identifying and mobilizing a specific group of people the case study calls champions.
The champions. You know, when I read this part of the source material, it immediately sounded like putting together a crew for a heist movie.
That's a surprisingly apt analogy for change management.
Right. If you are robbing a casino in a movie, you don't recruit 5 people who are all master safecrackers. That's totally redundant. You need a highly diverse squad, a safecracker, a getaway driver, a tech specialist. And it all has to be led by someone who sees the whole board, someone who understands the ultimate mission and can improvise when the alarm system unexpectedly goes off.
Precisely. Javier and Elena need to scour their organization to find these champions. And they need them on both the technical engineering side and the functional business side.
Okay.
These are the rare leaders who naturally possess the VUCA resilience we discussed earlier. They possess the business acumen to guide what the framework calls AI-augmented agile squads.
And what is the specific driving mission of these agile squads?
Their mission is singular and ruthless: deliver industrial ROI measurable return on investment in the now horizon.
So really fast.
Yes. Within the next 3 to 6 months, this small, cross-functional squad must build a localized AI solution that proves this orchestration approach actually works and generates undeniable financial or operational value.
Okay, let's drill down into the profile of a champion, because the source material poses a really crucial community question regarding this exact topic.
Yeah, it's a great question.
When Javier and Elena are looking across their hundreds of employees to identify these champions, do they prioritize pure technical skill and coding ability? Or do they prioritize leadership, communication, and adaptability across different business areas?
Well, if we synthesize everything we've analyzed today, the
Right.
catastrophic failure, the IT project fallacy, the necessity of radical ownership, the shift from executing to orchestrating, the answer to that community question becomes glaringly clear.
Right.
While a baseline of technical literacy is obviously helpful, prioritizing pure technical skill when choosing a champion is a trap.
Let's explain why to the listener, because intuitively, wouldn't the person who understands the complex mathematical algorithms of the AI best be the most qualified champion to lead an AI squad?
Not if they cannot communicate a business objective.
Ah.
Not if they lack the emotional intelligence to negotiate with a terrified HR department. In this new orchestration paradigm, adaptability and leadership are paramount.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A champion is someone who fundamentally understands the why of the overall business. They are the crucial translator who can bridge the chasm between Elena's deeply technical engineers and Javier's business-focused functional managers.
They're the bridge. They are the leaders who possess the credibility to walk onto the engineering floor, look the veteran developers in the eye and say, I know you are experiencing replacement anxiety. I know this feels like an existential threat, but here's how we are going to use this tool to elevate your role from writing syntax to designing enterprise architecture.
Exactly.
And equally, they have the authority to walk into the finance department, look the passive managers in the eye and say, stop waiting for IT to hand you a finished tool. You own this. We are going to build this risk simulation model together right now, and you are going to define the parameters.
Yes, they drive the radical ownership.
Yeah.
And when these agile squads are successfully mobilized, and when they actually deliver that first piece of undeniable, measurable ROI within a few months, something magical happens to the human operating system of the company.
What happens?
The pervasive organizational skepticism begins to dissolve.
Because the theoretical debate ends. The proof of concept changes the reality of the culture.
Yes. The paralyzing fear of the unknown is systematically replaced by the tangible evidence of success.
So by diligently working through this entire framework, moving employees from passive users to active orchestrators, instilling radical ownership, demanding architectural judgment, and mobilizing these diverse agile squads led by adaptable champions Javier and Elena finally bridge the gap.
They do. They successfully upgrade the human OS.
And the source material notes a beautiful transition here. The paralyzing fear of replacement finally dissolves into a dynamic culture of co-creation.
Co-creation. That is the ultimate operational goal of the entire strategy. It is the synthesis of the human and the machine working in tandem,
Right.
each amplifying the inherent strengths of the other rather than competing for the same low-level tasks.
Elena, the CTO, who started this journey dealing with a completely paralyzed engineering floor, arrives at a brilliant realization at the end of the case study.
It's a great moment.
She says, and I'm quoting the text exactly here, "We are no longer a company that uses AI. We are an organization of orchestrators who lead with intent."
That single quote is the thesis statement of this entire transformation. It perfectly captures the profound philosophical difference between using AI as a mere software tool and leading with intent as a fundamental operating principle of the business.
Yeah, it's night and day.
Because when you merely use AI, you are still trapped in the legacy mindset. You are treating it like a very fast calculator or a better search engine. You're passively waiting for it to do the work for you.
But when you elevate yourself to an organization of orchestrators leading with intent,
You place yourself firmly in the driver's seat of the Formula One car.
right.
You own the outcomes. The technology ceases to be an existential threat to your relevance and instead becomes a massive, scalable extension of your strategic vision.
The human OS has been successfully patched, the system has rebooted, and the workforce is now operating at a significantly higher level of consciousness and capability.
Ex-
This successful upgrade of the human OS brings Javier and Elena to the precipice of their next great challenge. They've managed to get the culture right. The workforce is empowered rather than paralyzed. The agile squads are producing actual ROI in the short term.
Yeah.
But the source material leaves us with a fascinating teaser for the beyond horizon, that 1 to 3 year outlook. It poses a critical question. How do we ensure this newfound agility doesn't eventually become dependent on a single software tool or vendor?
Right.
And it introduces the necessity of phase 3, which is building tool-agnostic foundations.
And this is a vital, forward-looking insight from the research, because as we established, we live in a VUCA environment.
Yeah, everything is changing.
The specific AI model, the vendor or the interface that your company relies on to generate incredible ROI today might be completely outpaced by a rival competitor's model tomorrow.
That's entirely possible.
If your entire organizational operating system, your training, your workflows, your daily habits, if that is hard-coded to the specific interface of one single vendor, you're entirely vulnerable to disruption.
You're essentially just locking yourself into a brand new kind of legacy hardware. You are building a new prison for yourself.
Exactly. Achieving a tool-agnostic foundation means that your team's ability to orchestrate, their deep mastery of intent, and their rigorous architectural judgment exist completely independent of any specific technological platform.
Right.
A true orchestrator knows how to prompt effectively, how to critically evaluate output, and how to integrate data regardless of whether they are using a model from OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, or an open-source alternative.
Wow.
The permanent foundation of a company's future is the upgraded human capability, not the temporary software license.
It's about ensuring that you never try to run the future of your company on outdated human mindsets ever again. I mean, this has been an incredibly expansive journey through the intricacies of the human OS.
It really has.
We've navigated from the boardroom's perfect, flawless paper strategy, plunged down into the deep psychological paralysis of the engineering floor, waded through the legacy apathy of the functional business managers, and finally constructed a robust framework of radical ownership to orchestrate a true, lasting transformation.
It is a comprehensive blueprint that every executive team, and frankly, every individual professional who wants to remain relevant in the next decade, needs to deeply internalize.
Definitely. And as we prepare to wrap up this analysis of the source materials, I want to leave you, the listener, with a provocative thought.
Okay.
The research ends with a few community questions that are incredibly pertinent to your own day-to-day reality right now. I want you to think about your own role, your own desk, your own daily tasks.
Yeah, look at what you do every day.
Which specific human competencies do you believe are completely impossible to automate in your specific industry? And more importantly, where does your true architectural judgment lie?
That's the key.
What is the unique, hard-won wisdom, context, and intuition you possess that a reasoning machine simply cannot replicate? Because identifying that judgment is no longer just a philosophical exercise. That is the exact space where you need to build your future.
This was Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation where knowledge becomes direction.
I hope this episode offered you a useful pause, a boost of inspiration, or even a starting point for what's ahead.
We hope to have left you with ideas, questions, and most importantly, the drive to keep building your path in the world of technology and talent.
Leave us a comment, share this with your team, and help us keep growing the conversation.
Follow us on social media at Sequoia Connect, and remember, the future doesn't just happen, it's built with talent, technology, and purpose.
We are Silva, and we'll catch you in the next episode.